Have you ever looked back at the challenges you've faced and been able to laugh? Have you been able to achieve the goals and dreams that you've envisioned for yourself since the time that you were younger? Are you right now where you always thought that you'd be? Stay tuned now for an all new episode of One. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy you're here with us for an all new episode of One presented by The Breakthrough Show. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and I'm super excited to be here with you for another story time this evening. I want to introduce you to our one guest today. He's an entrepreneur blending positivity, visualization, and humor to help his clients actualize their dreams. Please welcome a regular here on the Breakthrough Show Network. He's the Motivational Firewood Guy, Steve Gamlin. Welcome, Steve. It's always good to have a familiar face here on the show.
Honored to be here again, Jessica, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I was coming up with this show, you are, fun fact, literally the first person that I thought of because you're such an amazing storyteller. So I'm looking forward to this as much as our audience is today.
Truly honored to be here and to be hey, in the top of your thoughts for storytelling and humor. Hey, rock on. Let's go.
All right. All right. So, Steve, I would love for you to tell us your one story.
For me, it all started. Now I got 55 birthday candles on my cake now. It all started when I was 11 years old. So we're talking the late 70s here. I wanted to be a radio DJ because of a TV show called WKRP in Cincinnati, who had a character called Dr. Johnny Fever, who I thought was the coolest human being on the planet. So I wanted to be a radio DJ. I also wanted to be a stand-up comedian because Steve Martin was huge at the time, and laughter and humor are so important to me. Thanks to my mom, I wanted to be an author. I wanted to write my own book. She instilled such a love of reading and writing in my sister and I that still exists today. And I also wanted to be a teacher of people, but not in a classroom setting, because I had this incredible fifth grade teacher named Mrs. Farron, who, whenever I finished up with my work, would encourage me to help some of the other students who might be struggling with that particular lesson. So she actually inspired me to want to coach people early on when I was 11 years old. So I had my entire life planned in front of me. And at the time, I was, like I said, 11 years old. And a couple of years later, went to junior high. Now, 99% of my friends went to one school, and I went to another where I didn't really know anyone. And in the spelling bee that year, I got the sentence from my English teacher, Sister Helen, spell the word awad. And I just thought about it going, that word doesn't even sound familiar. So I said AWAD. And she said, no. And I did the walk of shame all the way back to my seat as everybody else laughed at me. It turned out she meant award with an R in it, AWARD. Now, if I'd only been as smart as some of the other kids you see on TV and said, sister, could you use that in a sentence? I probably would have gotten it. What I didn't realize until my mid-30s was that moment, because of raising my hand, being up in front of people and getting embarrassed, that moment got me to stop raising my hand in class. I stopped participating in class unless I was called on, but I did not volunteer myself to be in the spotlight for many years after that. And what happened, up until 7th grade, I was getting almost all A's. And my confidence in my grades trailed smoke until I finally graduated college by 62 one-thousandths of a point at the age of 22. And I just kind of sat there struggling for a couple of years what was I going to do with my life? I did some carpentry with my dad because my dad had a small remodeling company, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I didn't really feel like I had a place of my own. And a friend of mine asked me one day when I was 24, why didn't you ever follow your dream of being on the radio? You do the music for all the parties. You know all the trivia. You know more about music than anyone. And you're always so happy when you're talking about music. And out of excuses, I borrowed $4,000 from my grandfather, whose couch I was living on at the time, broke and depressed. And I went to broadcast school in the summer of 1992. And at the end of the summer, I got an internship at a rock radio station that we had grown up listening to. Now, an internship pays nothing, but it's a foot in the door. And a lesson my father always told me is you work hard to get your foot in the door and then work even harder to not get thrown back out the door. So I had an internship. It was a way in. And I drove to my friend's house who had believed in me to follow my dream. And I hadn't seen him all summer because I was living down in Boston at my mom's apartment while going to broadcast school. And he asked, where have you been all summer? I said, radio school. And he went, get a job? I said, well, I got an internship. And of course, I got the I told you so speech, you big gummy, you should have listened to me long ago. And he was so happy and he was so proud. And unfortunately, that friend passed away about 3 weeks later. He had had cancer twice prior, and it came back very quickly, and he passed away. But he lived long enough for me to follow his advice and follow my dream. And I survived 10 years in the radio industry, which is a long time. I worked about 15 years worth of hours. Early on in my radio career, I also discovered that when you're making poverty level wages, you've got to do something else to make money. So a friend of mine on the morning show of this rock station had a DJ business, and he asked me to help him out at a wedding. And now I can't dance, terrible at dancing, but he assured me I wouldn't have to. And I could just stand behind the table or just be out there entertaining or whatever. And I fell in love with that. So I spent 10 years working 6 or 7 days a week, probably 70 plus hours, worked 15 years worth of hours in 10 and absolutely burnt myself into the ground. Now, during that time, I'd gotten married. And in the very early 2000s, I knew that I had to stop doing this. The Thursday morning chest pains were starting to come on Wednesdays. I was exhausted. I was just so mentally, physically, even spiritually, just getting bankrupt and just feeling like I was falling apart. And in a very rash decision, I decided to walk away from my radio career. One of the very last things I did was get up on stage in front of 15,000 people at a rock concert we had put together, my radio station at the time, and announce a band of people, rock stars that we had gotten to know and become friends. And after the concert, there was a fireworks show choreographed to music that we had produced. And I remember so vividly sitting at the front of the stage with my legs just hanging off the stage, watching the fireworks. And for whatever reason, it made me think of that friend who'd believed in me. And I had tears coming down my face, knowing that I was walking away from this. And I just looked up and I said, man, thank you. Because you believed in me when I didn't. None of this would have happened. And I couldn't even imagine where my life would have been had that friend not asked me why I never pursued my dream. So I walked away from radio, built a recording studio at my dad's house, and proceeded to fall into a deeper depression as my marriage fell apart. And at age 35, I realized I was $62,000 in debt because I'd built this whole new studio on credit, no longer had a full-time job, had that little DJ business that was making about $11,000 a year, just barely keeping me fed, and fell apart. Went through a divorce, almost filed for bankruptcy, but didn't. And I wound up living at my dad's house where my recording studio was. And I remember a very hot and humid August afternoon in 2003. I had $3 left in my pocket, and I was driving past this little mini golf place that had a driving range in it. And I said, I really feel like getting out a bunch of frustration here. So with the last $3 I had in my pocket for that week, I got a bucket of golf balls, and I went to the farthest tee box on the property as far from the parking lot as possible because I am a horrific golfer. If I hit one straight, it means I was aiming somewhere else. So I went down to the farthest tee box where I was underneath these big steel column power lines. And all of a sudden, you live in New England, you know what happens on hot, humid afternoons, a thunderstorm came ripping through. So there I stood, barefoot in the wet grass, under power lines, in the middle of a massive thunderstorm, laughing at the irony of it all. And I held the club up and I just looked up at the sky and I said, go ahead. I dare you. My life was just a steaming pile of crap at the moment. And I was trying to just be sarcastic, but I actually threatened the storm to take me out. And then it didn't. So I hit my bucket of golf balls and also the buckets almost full of two guys who'd been near me, but ran from the storm. So I spent over an hour taking out all my frustrations on these golf balls. And when I finished up, I could barely lift my arms. And I got to my car. And as soon as I opened the door, the sun came out and the rain stopped and the storm was gone. And I just started laughing because I thought that was funny. That's just God messing with me now. You know, and all the thunder I heard, I just kept thinking, well, God's laughing at me because my life is pretty pathetic right now. So it was a shift in the attitude. Once I got all the venom out of there and the frustrations and taking it out of myself because I was brutally self-deprecating at the time. And the next day, I was on a phone call with a brand new life coach. I was actually his first client. He was the husband of a friend of mine. And he was doing me a favor by coaching me. And I was doing him a favor by letting him run through all his exercises and all these new things he'd just been certified to do. And he said, how was your week? And I just replied, I said, put down your pen and listen to this. And as funny as I could make it sound, very self-deprecating, but still funny, I told him about that hour in the thunderstorm and hitting the golf balls and daring the storm to hit me. And when he stopped laughing, which is something, by the way, if you're a coach, you should never laugh at how pathetic your clients' lives are. But when he stopped laughing, he said, I have two questions for you. Are you this open and honest about your life with everybody, even people who are practically strangers? I said, yeah. Have you ever thought of becoming a motivational speaker or a stand-up comic? And I just stopped and I started cracking up. I said, you're not going to believe this. I said, when I was 11 years old, I wanted to be a radio DJ, a stand-up comedian, a writer of books. And by the way, my first book had just come out at that time. And I also wanted to be a teacher of people, which kind of fell under the speaking and the humor and the coaching and all of these things. And I said yes to both, but I have no idea how to pursue either one. And then he said, you're not going to believe this, but on my desk in the junk mail pile, there's a little postcard from a local community college. And in 2 weeks, they have a class called Intro to Stand-Up Comedy. Do you want me to send it to you? Yeah. And then he asked, have you ever heard of Toastmasters? And I said, well, I've kind of heard the name. They teach you how to become a better speaker or something. He goes, yeah. He goes, you got the stories. He goes, just join and just go through and sharpen things up and get your focus and build up your confidence and your presentation skills. And a week after the first comedy class, I was in my first Toastmasters meeting. And I loved it. I love the feeling of it. I love being able to share it. It built my confidence. I wound up doing stand-up comedy for 7 years. I've been speaking now for more than 18 years. I created the Vision Board Mastery Program about 11 years ago. I've been a visualization coach for about the past 9 years. So all of these things stacked up and my life started to improve. Early on, I started to learn about visualization because I heard about this thing called The Secret, where it talked about the law of attraction. And some of it I really embraced, and some of it I thought was, kind of that motivational woo-woo stuff that I didn't really grasp onto. But I started to use visualization to create little wins at first in my life. I started to create vision boards, started to imagine all the areas of my life, my physical health, emotional well-being, my relationships, my core values and ethics that guide me, my spirituality and faith that do the same, my connection to people in a real way, and also my business and financially. and started to set goals in all these areas. In around 2007, I realized, I'd been divorced a few years. I'd worked on myself enough. That was one of the first visualizations I was doing, was creating the best version of myself to find my forever true love, whoever she may be, but started to describe and see and visualize the dream relationship that I wish to have. And of course, I had to become the best version of myself to help it to happen. And in January of 2007, I put together that year's vision board with some couples enjoying the type of relationship I wanted to have, walking hand in hand on the beach, standing at the railing of a ship at sunset, holding hands, a guy piggybacking his girlfriend through a brook so she didn't get all wet, a couple making dinner together in their kitchen. And that was the vision for that year. And I said, this is the year I'm going to discover her, whoever she may be. And in the first week of June, I wrote in my journal, I am ready to fall in love. And on June 16th, I got an email that I almost deleted because I thought it was spam from someone named Tina. And I almost deleted it, and something shiny happened, like the phone rang, squirrel. And I didn't look back at it until the next day. And I opened it up and realized it was from a girl named Tina that I'd gone to high school with, who I hadn't seen or spoken to in 21 years since we graduated. And I started to remember her and remembered that I'd had a crush on her for a couple of years in high school, but I never had the guts to ask her out. And here she was at this point, living 1,000 miles away. And she was reaching out to me, and she said, hey, I saw you online, saw your name. We should keep in touch. And a month later, without even a picture of her, phone, text, and email only, I started to have feelings for her again. And thank God she admitted it first. A month after the original email, she said, here's how I really felt about you in high school. When I saw your name, when I got your email, when I heard your voice, I love you. And this June is our 16th anniversary. So another win in the process of my life, breathing into it, all the things I'd learned, the highs and the lows up until then, and all the skills I'd developed. Big thanks to these two conversations with these two people who had inspired me to change my life. And on a recent podcast, the host said, wow, those two people were really important. And I said, the funny part is they both had the same first name. Both their names are Daniel. And he said, oh my gosh, that's like having a guardian angel for you. And I realized it took me 30 years to do this. I looked up what the guardian angel Daniel stands for. And I got absolute goosebumps when I discovered it, because Daniel helps us to speak and talk to someone in an easy way without hurting someone. He's the angel of eloquence in our lives, and he will always speak the truth. He's the angel who helps us to make decisions, to see situations from different perspectives. He's the patron saint of leaders and speakers, and he can help us when we have important announcements to make, and helps us to express the best versions of ourselves. And looking back, when I was 24, my friend Danny is the one who asked me the question of why I never followed my dream of being on the radio. And at age 35, a coach named Dan, with whom I'm still friends, asked me if I ever thought of being a motivational speaker or a stand-up comedian, which has led to everything I'm doing now. I'm sitting now in my second recording studio that I built. I, like I said, enjoyed a 7-year comedy career. I've now published 4 books. Thank you, Mom. And I'm living this amazing life and getting to share it with other people, and to talk about the gift and the power of visualization. And it all started when I was 11 years old, 44 years ago. And now at age 55, I'm getting to live and breathe life into and continue to grow all the lessons I've learned, being unlocked by 2 guardian angels who showed up at just the right time with just the right questions. And I always say, as a speaker and as a coach, I want to be that person. I want to be that angel for other people. And being this way and having this mindset, and I often joke in one of my keynote speech stories that my life resembles a phoenix riding a pogo stick, because I don't just always come out of the ashes and have it be a full-on successful flight. Every once in a while we fall back in, but every time we do, and every time we burn off those tail feathers, we learn something. And they grow back, and they grow back more strongly, more vividly colored, and allow us to fly even higher. So by no means at this age am I saying that I'm flying as high as I'll ever fly. Something's going to happen. New angels will show up. I will get to be an angel for some other people. And that's my one story. So thank you for allowing me to be here to share it.
Thank you so much, Steve, for sharing your one story with us this evening. This is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about bringing guests that we've had maybe on other shows or telling different stories to come back and share again, because there's always another layer to peel off. There's always something else to learn. And you have not disappointed, my friend, here this evening. I have to ask you, with your experiences that you've been through, how has it helped you to be able to relate better to humanity, to your clients, to your peers? The things that you've been through, it seems that you've been able to easily visualize your dreams, and now you're getting to see them come to reality. How has it been able to help you in situations where maybe your peers are unable to as easily visualize those things? Maybe they've had big dreams, but they can't really see it like you can. How does that play out in your life now? Has it helped you, or is it difficult for you to relate?
It's actually made it a lot easier. In when I look back, it's the gift of humor, the gifts of creativity, the gifts of just being a regular everyday person coming from a blue collar background and blue collar mindset with blue collar work ethics and core values. It's really allowed me to break it down and really communicate with people on a very real level. And my favorite description, somebody once said, "You are the least full of crap speaker and coach I think I've ever talked to." which I said, "Oh my gosh, if I put that on a fridge magnet, my mom would have it hanging in her kitchen, because she absolutely loves that." So what I try to do with people, and you and I both know there are so many people in this space, the personal professional development, who act like they are God. The thundering voice, the laser, the fogs machines, everything on stage, getting people jumping up and down. Whereas I would rather have an intimate conversation with someone to be able to impact their lives. In like I said, going back to my core values, which are build the best relationships, create a vivid vision with everyone I communicate with, cultivate kindness with every conversation. And my favorite, the fourth one, be fun as hell to work with. That's made my job in the creation of my business so much better than it could have been if I was out here trying to create who I felt I should be as compared to some of the other people in this industry. Mm-hmm. I'm just me. And everything I do is an extension of who I am. And I've had coaches say, "No, Steve, you got to be this way." Nope. I will not get up on stage and yell things that rhyme. I will not, yell these little acronyms and catchphrases and mantras. And, I will not get up and yell, "Fear is false evidence appearing real." I only have one acronym. It's Mosafogi. Many other speakers are full of garbage indeed. The only one I use.
I love that. I love that. And I find that to be very true of Steve. Every interaction that I've had with him screams authenticity. And so I highly recommend that you share this conversation out this evening, share this story out this evening, so that other people can be inspired by Steve's story. Steve, I put your website down below a little bit earlier, and it's also in the description of the show, but I would love for you to verbally tell everybody where they can find you and what they can find there on your website.
Sure thing. Nice and easy. It is stevegamlin.com. And there you can learn about my speaking, my vision board mastery program, the visualization coaching programs that I have. And one of my favorite pillars under my business is actually helping other professional speakers to become funnier and to use humor in their presentations. So everything that has been brought to my life, all the gifts I've been given, and tools I've developed and continue to sharpen gets to be part of who I am every single day. And this is the greatest version of me so far at age 55 that I could have ever dreamed up when I was just that 11-year-old kid.
I love it. I love it. Steve, thank you so much for coming back on the Breakthrough Show Network with us today and for being one of our first guests here on this one series. I really appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you all for watching or listening wherever you are in the world today. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and I'll see you next time for another episode with one guest, one story, and one question. We'll see you next time.